The auction hall was dark, loud, and full of shadows. Smugglers, traders, and soldiers leaned close to each other, shouting bids over the smell of rust and smoke. Strange cages stood on the stage, each holding something alive. Some contained rare animals dragged from alien worlds, some held prisoners with chains across their necks. So the crowd cheered, laughed, or drank, as if suffering was entertainment. But Jackson sat still near the back, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. He was an engineer, not a buyer. And yet something had pulled him here tonight. When the auctioneer slammed his staff against the floor and shouted for silence, the lights dimmed. Next, he called, his voice thick with greed, a rare creature. Broken, but still valuable. Curtains opened, and a cage rolled forward. Inside was a figure so thin and frail that at first Jackson thought she was dead. Her skin carried a silver hue, bruised and cracked in places where wires pushed out. Her arms trembled, her knees barely held her up. She looked part machine, part flesh, and yet neither side seemed whole. The crowd burst into laughter as she stumbled against the bars. "She's nothing but junk metal now," one man roared. Another threw a bottle at her cage, and it shattered into glass at her feet. Jackson should have turned away. She was no business of his, but his eyes locked on hers. Even through the smoke and the cruel lights, he saw them two glowing orbs that flickered weakly, as if a dying flame struggled to survive. They weren't human eyes. They weren't like anything he had seen before. But in them, he saw fear and pain and something deeper, a silent plea. The auctioneer raised his voice. "She cannot fight. She cannot work. Only fit for laughter, or parts. Who bids?" The crowd shouted numbers, but all were low. Some jeered, others mocked. A few wanted her only to tear apart for her alien implants. A man beside Jackson elbowed him, grinning. "Don't you laugh too?" Look at her barely able to breathe. The men around him cackled, slapping the table. Jackson's throat tightened, his chest burned, but no sound left his mouth. He didn't laugh. He couldn't. The broken alien lifted her head. Her gaze searched the crowd, unfocused, weak. Then her eyes stopped on him. Jackson felt a chill crawl up his spine. She blinked once, twice, and then her lips moved. No sound came at first, just a faint hiss of breath. But then, clear as a whisper inside his skull, he heard it. "Help me." His heart thudded hard, glanced around quickly, but no one reacted. The others were still shouting, bidding, mocking. No one else had heard. The auctioneer banged his staff again. "Enough. Final bid. 500 credits." The crowd groaned, unimpressed. Jackson's hand shook. He had no plan, no reason to act, and yet he heard the whisper again, stronger this time, echoing deep in his mind. "Help me. I can be whole again." He rose to his feet before his thoughts could catch up with his body. His voice, loud, firm, carried across the hall. 1,000. The crowd fell silent for a moment, heads turned. Some cursed, others laughed harder, thinking it a joke. But the auctioneer's eyes glittered. Sold. The gavel struck, sealing a fate Jackson did not understand. As guards rolled the cage off stage, Jackson's chest tightened with dread. He knew what he had just done. He had bought himself trouble, bought something everyone else wanted destroyed. And yet as the alien's glowing eyes flickered again, he swore he saw something like hope pass across her broken face. Minutes later, in a rusted storage bay, two guards shoved the cage toward him. "She's yours now, fool," one sneered. "Don't come crying when she bites your throat out." They walked off, laughing, leaving Jackson alone. He crouched near the cage. The alien lay curled against the bars, trembling, her breathing ragged. Slowly, carefully, he whispered, "Can you understand me?" Her eyes opened halfway, faint light glowing in their depths. Then the voice came again, not through her lips, but straight into his mind. Yes, Jackson exhaled, the weight of the moment sinking over him. This wasn't just some broken creature. She was alive, aware, and reaching for him with something. He couldn't explain. He reached toward the bars, his fingers brushing against the cold metal. The alien lifted her hand weakly. wires hanging from her wrist, and pressed her palm against the same spot. For a moment, engineer and prisoner, human. An alien shared a connection stronger than the cage that separated them. But in the distance, alarms suddenly rang. The marketplace stirred with angry voices. Somewhere men shouted that the buyer had cheated, that the alien was worth more than anyone had guessed. Jackson looked into her eyes one last time. The whisper returned, urgent, burning. Before they take me back. The night on the station felt heavy. It's filled with metal groans and distant shouts as Jackson dragged the cage through the maintenance tunnels. He had hidden things before, tolls, stolen parts, even contraband fuel cells, but never something alive. Every clang of the wheels echoed like thunder in his ears. He kept glancing behind him, expecting guards to appear at any second. The alien inside shifted weakly, her breaths shallow, her eyes flickering with that strange inner glow. Finally, he reached his workshop. A cramped room stacked with scrap engines, broken droids, and half-finished machines. He locked the door, sealed the vents, and rolled the cage into the corner. For a moment he just stood there, staring at her, unsure of what he had actually done. "I've gone insane," he muttered to himself. "I bought you. I really bought you." The alien lifted her head, her movements slow and strained. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come from her mouth. They bloomed directly inside his skull, soft but sharp. "You saved me. Thank you." Jackson swallowed hard. "Saved? You look like you're dying." He crouched down, shining a light. Over her body, up close, the damage was worse than he thought. Metal plates had been fused into her skin, but many were bent, cracked, or seared. Wires hung like torn veins, sparking faintly. Some parts looked surgically cut to disable her strength, as if someone had made her powerless on purpose. He shook his head. They broke you." Her eyes blinked, the glow pulsing faintly. "They feared me. They cut me. They wanted me weak." Jackson's stomach tightened. He wasn't a doctor, but he was an engineer, and he recognized the technology woven into her body. Whoever had done this hadn't just hurt her, they had dismantled her like a machine. He fetched a toolkit and powered on his scanner. The screen filled with red lines, flashing warnings of failing circuits, toxic leaks, and bone fractures. "You shouldn't even be alive," he whispered. The alien's whisper pressed again inside his mind. "Make me whole." Jackson hesitated, holding the scanner above her chest. "If I try to fix you, if I reconnect all this, I don't even know what you'll become. Maybe you'll turn on me. Maybe you'll kill me." Her eyes didn't blink this time. The glow deepened, steady, and unshaken. "You didn't laugh at me. You saw me. I will not harm you." Something in the way she said it made his chest tighten. He didn't understand why, but he believed her. He unlocked the cage and carefully lifted her out. She weighed less than he expected, her body frail against his arms. He laid her on the work table, pushing aside scrap parts to make space. The hours that followed blurred together. Jackson cut away burned wires, soldered broken circuits, and patched open wounds with every piece of tech and bandage he could find. Each time he repaired something, she gasped softly, her body twitching as if sparks of life were fighting their way back into her veins. He was sweating, shaking, but he didn't stop. Then suddenly, her back arched. Light exploded from her eyes. Flooding the workshop in silver, tools flew off the shelves, screens cracked, and the floor shuddered as if an unseen force had pushed against the walls. Jackson threw his arms over his face, bracing himself. When the light dimmed, he dared to look. Again, she lay panting, her chest rising and falling, the glow in her eyes brighter than before. She looked at him, and this time her lips actually moved with the words, "I remember." Her voice was rough, broken, but real. Jackson stumbled back. His breath caught in his throat. "What do you remember?" Her gaze flickered away, as if afraid of the answer. "Chains, my name is Lyra." The moment hung heavy in the room, but it shattered with the sound of pounding footsteps in the hall. Jackson froze. Voices echoed outside station security. Someone had tracked the missing auction prize here. "Search every bay," a guard barked. That thing's worth more than the ship it was sold on. Jackson's pulse raced. He grabbed a plasma cutter and moved to the door. Lyra struggled to sit up, her body still weak, sparks flickering along her arms. "They will take me back," she whispered. "They will break me again." Jackson met her glowing eyes, then looked toward the locked door where shadows moved under the gap. He realized he had no choice anymore. He had started this. He had saved her. Now he had to fight to keep her safe. And just as the guard slammed against the door, Lyra's hand jerked upward. A shockwave burst from her palm, slamming into the wall and blowing it wide open. Metal screamed, smoke filled the workshop, and alarms blared across the station. Jackson stared at her in stunned silence. She was broken. Yes, but even broken. She was dangerous. The door burst inward, guards rushing through the smoke. Jackson's heart pounded as Lyra's glowing eyes locked onto his. I will fight. Smoke choked the air, alarms wailed, and red lights painted the workshop like a warning. Guards stormed inside with rifles raised, shouting orders. Jackson grabbed the plasma cutter in both hands, his knuckles white, but he knew it wasn't enough against trained soldiers. His breath came fast, his mind screaming for a way out. Lyra slid off the table, her legs trembling, but her eyes burning, brighter than before. Sparks flickered from the wires on her arms, her broken body still unstable but alive. One of the guards spotted her and sneered, "Contain the alien. Don't damage her, she's worth too much." "Ooh!" The words made Jackson's stomach turn. They weren't coming for justice, only profit. Before he could move, Lyra's palm lifted, and a surge of energy rippled through the air. The guard's rifle bent with a groan of twisted metal, snapping out of his hands. A second soldier raised his weapon, but the ground under his boots cracked, as if invisible claws had ripped through it, stumbled, crashing into a wall. Jackson froze, caught between terror and awe. Lyra swayed on her feet, clearly still weak. But every time her eyes glowed brighter, the world seemed to bend around her. She wasn't just broken machinery, she was something more, something powerful. "Move," one of the guards shouted, charging forward. Jackson swung the plasma cutter wildly, sparks flying as the blade cut across the man's armor. The soldier fell back, cursing, and Jackson's hands shook from the shock of actually fighting. He wasn't a soldier, he was just an engineer. Yet here he was, standing between her and them. Lyra stumbled, collapsing against the table. Jackson darted to her side, his heart hammering. "You can't keep doing this, you'll tear yourself apart." Her head tilted toward him, her glowing eyes softer now. "Not without you." The words brushed against his thoughts like a whisper of wind. More boots thundered in the hall. Jackson made a decision without thinking. He grabbed his tool satchel, slung it over his shoulder, and pulled Lyra's arm around him. "We're leaving now." They bolted through the hole in the wall, the one Lyra's shockwave had ripped open. The corridor outside was filled with smoke and sparks, pipes leaking, steam from the explosion. Jackson guided her down the narrow service passages, twisting left and right through forgotten maintenance shafts he knew by heart. Behind them, shouts and heavy steps echoed, growing closer. Lyra staggered with every step, her body shivering, her circuits flashing warnings like faint lightning across her skin. But she didn't let go of him. Every time her weight nearly pulled him down, she whispered through his mind, "I will not stop. I will not go back. They burst into an old docking bay, the kind long abandoned and half flooded with shadows. Jackson's own ship, a patched-together freighter that most people laughed at, sat rusting in the corner. He had dreamed of leaving this station for years, but never dared. Now, with alarms screaming across the walls and guards closing in, it was their only chance. "Get in," he said, pulling her toward the ramp. She stumbled, then froze. Her glowing eyes widened as if sensing something Jackson couldn't. She looked back over her shoulder, her voice cutting sharp into his mind. "They are not just guards. Something worse is coming." Before Jackson could ask, the bay doors slammed open. Shadows poured in, not soldiers this time, but tall figures clad in black armor that glistened like oil. Their helmets had no visors, no human shape, just smooth masks that reflected the light. They moved in silence, no shouts, no orders, only precision. Jackson felt his stomach twist. "Who are they?" Lyra's grip tightened on his arm. Her voice in his head carried fear for the first time. "Hunters. They are sent for beings like me." The armored figures raised their hands, and, from their gauntlets, glowing snares of energy shot forward, weaving nets in the air. Jackson pulled Lyra behind a cargo crate as the nets crackled against the floor where they had stood seconds before. The heat of the blast scorched the metal. Lyra pressed against the crate, her breaths uneven. "I am still too broken. It's day. Take me. You will never see me again." Jackson's pulse raced. He peeked out and saw the hunters fanning across the bay, moving in eerie silence. His ship's ramp was still open, only meters away, but so were the hunters. His choices narrowed to two: stay and fight with tools against enemies that didn't bleed, or gamble everything on a desperate sprint to the ship. He turned to her, meeting those burning eyes again. "Can you still do something? One more time?" Her voice was faint, trembling but steady. "With you beside me, yes." Jackson nodded, his grip tightening on the cutter. "Then let's make them regret underestimating us." Together, they stepped from behind the crate as the hunters closed in, silver glow meeting black steel. The battle for survival was about to begin, and for the first time, Jackson realized he wasn't just protecting her. He was fighting for both of their futures. The docking bay trembled with silence broken only by the faint hum of the hunters' weapons. Jackson felt the weight of every second pressing against his chest as the black-armored figures circled closer. Their movements smooth and inhuman. Lyra stood beside him, her body shaking with weakness, but her glowing eyes burned with defiance. The hunters didn't care about him. He could see it in the way their heads tilted toward her, as though he didn't exist. To them, he was nothing. To them, she was the prize. One of the hunters raised his gauntlet. Threads of electric light unfurled, a net of living energy that snapped across the floor with a crackling hiss. Jackson shoved Lyra behind him, swinging, his plasma cutter wildly. Blade hissed against the glowing strands, sending sparks showering. For a moment, the net resisted, then tore open with a violent flash. Jackson stumbled backward, his hands trembling from the jolt. The hunters tilted their heads, analyzing him. They hadn't expected resistance from a human. Lyra's voice pressed against his thoughts, urgent and strained. "They adapt. Every move you make, they learn. We must escape, not fight." Her warning proved true. The next hunter didn't throw, and net had unleashed a pulse wave that ripped through the bay. The ground buckled, crates flew into the air, and Jackson hit the floor hard, the plasma cutter sliding out of his hand. His ears rang, his vision blurred. Through the haze, he saw Lyra struggle to rise, her body twitching under the magnetic pull of the hunter's weapons. They weren't just capturing her, they were dismantling her strength, piece by piece. "No," Jackson roared, forcing himself to his feet. He sprinted for his ship, dove up the ramp and slapped the manual override. The engines coughed to life, spewing smoke, but they lit. He ran back down, grabbing Lyra under the arms. She was heavier now, as if the hunter's energy was dragging her down, pulling her apart. "Leave me," she whispered weakly into his mind. "Save yourself." Jackson shook his head violently. "Not a chance." He dragged her, step by step, toward the ramp as the hunters closed in. One of them raised its arm again, aiming for her. That's when Lyra's glow surged not from strength, but from desperation. Her eyes flared, blinding white, and the air itself screamed as an invisible shockwave tore through the bay. The hunters staggered, their black armor shuddering under the force. The walls cracked, lights exploded in a cargo. Crane toppled, smashing down between them and the ship. Jaxo didn't stop to think. He hauled her up the ramp, stumbled into the cockpit, and slammed the controls. The ship shuddered, groaned, then ripped free of the dock as bolts of plasma fire streaked past the windows. The hunters had drawn weapons now, their silent forms. Shrinking behind the rising smoke as his freighter shot into the void, stars exploded into view, endless and cold. Jackson's hands shook as he gripped the controls, his heart hammering. He glanced back at Lyra, slumped in the co-pilot's seat. Her glow dim but steady. "You're still alive," he muttered, almost in disbelief. "We made it out." Fluttered open, her voice brushing his mind with a whisper of warning. "No, they will follow. They never stop." Jackson looked at her, the weight of her words settling like stone in his stomach. He had thought escaping the station was the victory, but in truth, it was only the beginning. As he adjusted the ship's course into deep space, sensors beeped. A shadow appeared on the edge of the radar's leak, fast and closing in. The hunters had their own vessel, sharper and deadlier than anything Jackson had ever seen. His patched freighter didn't stand a chance in speed or firepower. Panic flared in his chest. But before he could speak, Lyra's hand touched the console. Circuits sparked, then steadied, as though her energy was merging with the ship. Her glowing eyes flicked toward him, steady despite her wounds. "Together," she whispered aloud this time, her voice raw but real. "You keep us flying, I will keep us alive." The ship lurched forward, its sluggish engine suddenly surging with unnatural power, as if her life itself had fused with the core. Jackson's eyes widened in disbelief as the freighter screamed across the stars, tearing through speed it had never been built for. Behind them, the hunter ship followed like a shadow that would never fade. Jackson tightened his grip on the controls, adrenaline and fear warring inside him. He realized then what this really meant. He wasn't just fixing her. He wasn't just saving her. By choosing to fight for her, he had made himself a target for the most relentless force in the galaxy. The stars blurred into streaks as Jackson's freighter screamed through space, pushed beyond its limits by Lyra's strange energy. Every bolt, every wire in the cockpit rattled, as if the ship itself begged to collapse. But Jackson kept his hands locked on the controls. Sweat ran down his face. He had flown this ship 100 times before, patched her up after every failure, but never had he felt her alive like this, never had he felt her fight with him. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's chair, her body trembling, her eyes dim yet still glowing faintly. Her hand rested against the console, arcs of soft blue light running from her fingertips into the ship's systems. Every time she pushed her strength into the circuits, the engines howled louder. Every time she faltered, the ship sputtered and threatened to stall. Behind them, the hunter's vessels stayed in pursuit. Sleek and sharp like a blade carved from night, it moved faster than any military craft Jackson had ever seen.
Ow.
No matter how hard he pushed, no matter how many emergency thrusters he fired, it stayed on their tail. He slammed the controls, veering the ship hard through an asteroid belt. Massive rocks spun and drifted like sleeping giants, their shadows swallowing light. The freighter twisted and rolled, barely sliding past jagged edges. One asteroid clipped the wing, tearing metal, but Jackson held the course. The hunters followed, without hesitation, weaving through the field with deadly precision. They didn't crash. They didn't slow. They didn't miss. "Damn it," Jackson shouted, slamming his fist against the console. His ship wasn't built for this. It wasn't built for this. Lyra's voice brushed through his mind, weaker now. "But steady, you cannot outrun them forever. They are endless, always learning, always hunting." His jaw tightened. "Then how do we stop them?" Her eyes met his. For the first time since he had found her broken on that table, there was fear inside them, not for herself, but for him. To break them, you must know what I am, and what they are. Before Jackson could ask, a blast ripped through the cockpit. The hunter's vessel had fired. Red alarms flared as the ship lurched sideways, panels bursting open with sparks. He fought the controls, teeth gritted. Another shot grazed the hull, spinning them closer to a massive asteroid. "Hold on," he yelled, slamming the thrusters. The freighter dove behind the rock, using its mass as a shield. For a few seconds, the hunter's ship vanished from sight, blocked by the stone. Jackson's heart pounded. We bought time. Just time. Lyra's hand slid away from the console, her glow fading. She looked fragile now, her body trembling like glass ready to shatter. Her voice pressed into his mind, soft and heavy with truth. They hunt me because I am not only machine, not only flesh. I am something they fear, a bridge between two worlds. Jackson stared, trying to make sense of her words. A bridge? Her eyes closed, her voice still inside his head. Created to heal what was broken. Human and alien bound together. But to them, I am an error, something that should never exist. They want me destroyed piece by piece, until nothing remains. Jackson felt the weight of her confession sink deep. It wasn't just broken metal. And wires. She wasn't just alien. She was something more, something new. And those hunters, silent and relentless, weren't just soldiers. They were executioners, sent to erase what they couldn't control. A soft ping pulled his attention to the radar. His chest tightened. The hunter's ship reappeared, sliding from behind the asteroid like a predator that had never lost its prey. Closer, faster, they're back. Jackson muttered. His hands tightened on the controls, but his mind raced. Running wasn't enough. Fixing her wasn't enough. If they kept fleeing without a plan, the hunters would eventually corner them. Then, he saw a blinking signal on the far edge of the radar. An abandoned outpost drifting in orbit around a dead moon, forgotten and silent, a place no sane pilot would land. Perfect Jax turned sharply, setting course. The freighter rattled, alarms screaming, but he pushed harder. Lyra's eyes opened again, weak but questioning. Why there? She whispered in his thoughts, "Because no one follows someone into a graveyard," Jackson said through clenched teeth. The hunter's vessel surged after them, closer now, weapons charging again. Jackson swallowed hard, forcing every ounce of focus into his flight. The ship was falling apart. Lyra was breaking more with every second. And the galaxy had sent its deadliest predators to erase them. But he wasn't going to let her be taken. Not while he still breathed. The dead moon loomed ahead, its broken outpost spinning like a ghost in orbit. Jackson pushed the thrusters to their limit. Sparks flew, metal groaned. The ship hurtled toward the ruins with the hunters right behind. There was no more running. Inside that outpost, they would make their stand. The dead moon loomed larger in the viewport, its cracked surface glowing faintly under the weak light of distant stars. The abandoned outpost drifted in slow orbit, a skeleton of metal torn open by time and war. Whole sections were missing, leaving. Jagged ribs of steel exposed, like the bones of some ancient beast. Jackson's freighter screamed as it dove toward it, warning alarms blaring louder than ever. The hull shook with each second, engines ready to tear themselves apart. Behind them, Hunter's vessel followed, steady and merciless. No fear, no hesitation, only pursuit. Jackson gritted his teeth and pulled hard on the controls, sending the freighter into the outpost's shadow. They skimmed close to twisted beams and shattered docking arms, sparks scraping the hull as they slid between broken metal. Ashes. One wrong move and they'd be shredded. But the hunters didn't back off. They slipped into the wreckage, too, gliding, like predators through a graveyard. Lyra stirred in the co-pilot's chair, her eyes weak but burning. Her voice pressed into his mind, ragged but determined. They will not stop. Not until I am erased. But here, we may have one chance. Jackson shot her a glance. What chance? were trapped in a coffin. Her gaze flicked toward the collapsing outpost, toward the dead moon below. Now, this place was not abandoned by chance. It was a battlefield. And what was left behind can still fight. Before he could ask, the hunter's ship fired. A blast of plasma tore past, smashing into the outpost wall. Metal exploded outward, debris scattering like knives. Jackson threw the freighter into a sharp dive, his heart pounding. He knew he couldn't keep this up. One hit, and it was over. Then show me, he barked, steering hard through a broken hangar gate. The ship skidded into darkness, crashing against the floor with a grinding scream. Lights burst, panels cracked, and the freighter slid to a violent halt inside the ruined bay. Smoke filled the cockpit. Jackson's hands shook as he unbuckled, his ears ringing. The hunter's ship didn't hesitate. Its shadow blocked the hangar, mouth as it descended, glowing weapons lighting the dark. They were coming. Lyra rose unsteadily, every movement pained. Her glow flickered like a candle in the wind. She pressed her hand to the console one last time, whispering into his mind, "You fought for me when others laughed. You made me whole when I was broken. Now I give you the only gift I can." Blue light surged from her body, rushing into the ship, into the walls, into the ancient systems of the outpost itself. Dead consoles flared alive. Towers of broken machinery flickered back into power. For a heartbeat, Jackson watched in awe as the entire station seemed to breathe again, resurrected by her will. The hunters entered, black armor gleaming.
Yes.
They fanned out, silent and cold, their weapons raised. Jackson grabbed his plasma cutter, but he knew it wasn't enough. He knew this fight wasn't his to win. Then the outpost roared to life. Cannons hidden in the broken walls swung forward, powered by Lyra's energy. Beams of light tore through the hangar, slamming into the hunter's ship before it could fire. The vessel shuddered, shields sparking, and exploded in a violent burst that shook the entire station. The hunters themselves staggered, their black forms glitching under the onslaught of power. They turned to strike back, but the walls themselves moved, mechanical arms crashing down, powered turrets spitting fire. Lyra's voice filled the chamber, not only in Jackson's head but echoing through the metal itself. "This is not your grave too, right? It is mine to choose." Her glow intensified, her body trembling, as if it could no longer contain the force inside her. The hunters faltered, their bodies splitting apart, shadows unraveling under her burning light. By one, they collapsed into nothing, erased by the very power they had hunted. When the last one fell, silence returned. The glow faded. The outpost dimmed. And Lyra collapsed into Jackson's arms, her eyes half closed, her light barely a flicker. No, stay with me," Jackson whispered, his voice breaking. Her faint smile trembled as she pressed one final thought into his mind. "Do not mourn the broken, for in you I was whole again." Her body stilled, her glow fading completely. Jackson sat there, holding her as the dead. Outposts drifted silently around the moon. Smoke curled from the wreckage, stars glimmered through shattered walls, and for the first time, the hunters were gone. He closed his eyes, grief sharp in his chest. He had fought not to laugh at her brokenness, but to heal it. And though the galaxy had taken her away, in her final act she had given him something greater than survival. She had given him the truth, that even in a cold, merciless universe, a broken life could shine brighter than 1,000 stars.